The meeting is being recorded. We have
This
a
meeting is being
application um, in another matter by the town, by the highway department to replace some culverts uh, that involve Noanette Brook on Dedham Street and Willow Street. And similar to the Claybrook Road matter that we handled in the last year, um, because this is an application by the town for a special permit, they have asked to waive the filing fee, which we did for the Claybrook Road matter. Um, so we need to consider a motion to waive the filing fee. Does anybody see any reason why we shouldn't grant such a motion?
recorded.
Then I'll entertain a motion to waive the filing fee for the town of Dover in the Noanette Brook matter.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Lynn, how are we doing?
Great, thank you.
I see Jonathan's with us.
Yep, and Erin is here as well.
Okay, do we need anybody else?
Nope, I think that Daniel was gonna try and join if it was still going, but I think Jonathan and I can carry his load for the moment.
Okay. So let's resume the hearing on an application by Robert Recchia for the issuance of a comprehensive permit under General Laws, Chapter 40B, Sections 20 through 23 for parcels on Trout Brook Road, Chickering Drive, and Edgewater Drive in Dover. Lynn Sweet is with us. She's the lead person on the team for the applicant. We have a recent submission from the applicant submitted pursuant to our last hearing session with rendering showing the appearance of the septic systems on lots 1 and 2. Lynn, do you want to discuss that first, or do you want to do the waiver issue first, or what would your preference be?
I'd love to bring up the plan so that I can let Erin go. So for the record, Lynn Sweet, LDS Consulting Group, Wellesley, Massachusetts, on behalf of the applicant. I'm here with Erin Fulham from CME Architects, and I'm gonna share the screen and bring up the first plan, and she can tell you just which vantage point the plan is from. Oops, that is not up. Hang on. I didn't click enough. We did, so this is plan 1, Erin.
Correct. So this is a view across the street, just backing up so we can get more of a picture of the yard and the septic to the right, which covers the systems for lot 1 and 2. This is looking at lot 1 with the septic system to the right as you head up towards the intersection of Claybrook and Trout Brook Road. You can see off to the right hand side, we have the retaining walls, and then we put plantings in front to kind of blend into the surrounding space, as well as, and then they kind of mimic similarly in height to the left side of the house where you have the retaining walls in the front, also covered with plantings. And this just moves us down a little bit more down towards like right directly in front of the septic systems, kind of giving you a view as if you were across the street in the yard across the street, just so that you could, that way we can kind of back up enough that you could see the house and the septic systems on the right hand side.
So basically both of the houses are, this is lot 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then the house to the left of this is lot 2.
It's lot 2. Mm-hmm.
So this is going towards the intersection of Trout Brook and Claybrook, which is where the 2 septic leaching fields are, just again to sort of reorient everybody a little bit. So we're going to keep going down the street. Oop, or not. I know. too many buttons here. They're really there's a lot of pixels in them. Okay.
Okay, so this is the view as if you were gonna kind of come up from the corner of Claybrook and Trout Brook as you walk up towards lot 1. Lot 2 would be beyond the house, but you can see the septic again. This is kind of that getting the massing of the field sort of from start to finish. And then again with plantings covering the retaining walls.
How high are those walls above ground level?
I think I don't have the septic open in front of me, Lynn, but I think it's about, was it 3 to 4 feet? Was
It's
the
three,
retaining
it's
wall
about
high?
3 to 4 feet.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, who asked that question?
Mike
That's
Donovan.
like,
Okay, great. So this is sort of pulled, you know, all the way back, trying, I know people were concerned about, well, what was the view from the corner of Trout Brook and Claybrook? And the reality is all of the mature trees are going to end up being down at that corner. So if we tried to give you a view from this, you know, the street around the corner, all you're going to see is trees. So we thought it would be better to say, well, what if, you know, if you're walking down the road, we just wanted to show that all these mature trees are going to be, you know, remaining there. And over time, like any new property, the landscaping is going to fill in. You know, there were discussions about how we were going to be going up 10 feet and we were, you know, this is the best we can do to show you that, you know, the lots will be brought up to street grade. We've been very clear about that. But that at the end of the day, you know, the retaining walls themselves are going to be 3 to 4 feet above street level.
What's the CAD system you're using?
The CAD system?
Okay. For the rendering programs?
Yeah, what is it?
We've used SketchUp is one of the we use a couple different programs to kind of get everything in there, but SketchUp and Lumion are 2 of the programs that she uses to kind of get that we get the views in there.
Can't you just shut off some of the layers to be able to see the the septic system with all the
Not live as we're on here.
Say it again, please.
Not live as we're on here. Every time we change anything, it has to re-render, so I can't change any of it while we're live on here.
What is it that you're hoping to understand? Because our goal is to cover the walls, not to expose them.
Well, I mean, that's great. It's a nice summery, you know, green leafy day. What about in the wintertime when the leaves fall off the shrubs and the trees? I mean, you're basically covering it. We can't really discern, you know, how big and how expansive this thing is.
You can probably look around the corner at the large house that has a very similar raised septic system with a retaining wall around the corner.
This is an 8-bedroom septic system. It's big. And you can't really see it.
That is an enormous house that is larger than our 2 houses combined.
Jonathan, do you want to bring that up?
I'm on my phone right now. I'd have to log out and log back in on my.
Do you remember what the address was?
Give me a second.
Yeah, I'll just bring it up because I think we brought it up last week.
I did.
Last time we had the meeting. At the end of the day, we have been very clear that these walls are going to. This is the only lot that is going to have the walls, and that the walls have been are not very tall at all. So let me just see if I can bring up the house that Jonathan is talking about.
Lynn, if the board ends up approving the application for special permit, would the applicant have any objection to a condition that provides for landscaping as shown in these renderings?
Yeah.
None at all.
None at all. And in fact, you know, again, we have the land. This is as important to the person that's going to be living in the home and buying the home, and to the builder as it is to the neighbors. So you know, we've tried to give you as best an example at this stage in the process as we can. And I just want to say it's not just a technicality, Alan, because I know you're an attorney. It would be a comprehensive permit versus a special permit.
I understand.
Okay.
Anything else you want to say, Lynn, about the renderings?
No, I think our team did, you know, a really good job. You know, we specifically kept the hearing open, requested to keep it open because we know it was something that you were interested in seeing. You know, we understand it's important what people see, you know, at the street level. You know, I think that we've done the best that we can to dispel some of, hopefully dispel some of the concerns um, about the walls themselves.
Okay, Kate Peterson from the Board of Health, did you want to say something or ask something?
Yes, I wanted to ask, or to say that the Board of Health has not received any septic plans for any of the lots. And I'd like to know when you plan to submit those to us so that we can review them.
That is a very fair question. This is the first sort of stage in the process. We have to go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals to have the use itself and the plans permitted. Following this, we will have to go in front of the Board of Health for the Title V approval. I suspect that in between that the developer will be going to the Conservation Commission as well. So this is I guess a linear process, if you will.
So you said something earlier that implied, or I inferred from it anyway, that the other systems would not be mounted because you said there would not be retaining walls, but I don't know if that's what you meant. But my understanding is that the groundwater is a problem throughout this area, and that probably all the systems will need to be mounted. But you know, again, we haven't seen the plans, so it's
Yeah, we have, unfortunately, my stormwater management engineer is not on tonight, and I actually don't see Scott either. But we did have the documents peer reviewed by Tetra Tech with regard specifically to stormwater management and wetlands. I don't believe that the other systems are mounted. Aaron, because I don't remember seeing any other retaining walls except I don't want to misspeak on this, but I can assure you that no one is going to be bypassing the Board of Health on this matter. We just are trying to take our permits one at a time. Let me see if I can bring up the old plans that we showed, because there may be one more house that has a small kneeling wall in front, but I don't think the septic systems had been mounted. So a lot of, oh, Sean is here. He's going to come to my rescue.
Well, let's let Kay follow up. Kay, what did you want to say?
I wanted to say that you mentioned stormwater, but I'm referring to the groundwater and the separation of the septic system with the groundwater. So the perk rate is very fast in this area, and there needs to be Title V is going to require probably, you know, again, we have to look at each lot and the plans and so forth, but Title V is likely to require 5 feet of separation from the bottom part of the leaching field to groundwater. And that's going to require significant mounding in probably all of the lots. And you had said something that made it sound as if there wouldn't be mounding in the
lots are below street level right now, so a lot of them are going to be brought up to grade. I'm just trying to put my hands on the plans, but Sean may have a better answer for me.
So
who did the peer review for the town.
So what you're saying is that because the whole lot will be brought up to grade, that then the mounding above that, anything else that's needed for the septic system would not be as great as it might be
As
otherwise.
what I think you're thinking. I'm just trying to bring up our last presentation. I don't know
Tom,
why.
do
Oh,
you want
here
to
it
jump
is.
in here and say something?
Yeah, sure. All of the systems are mounted systems because the natural grade at the site is so low. But to Lynn's point, the entire grade around the whole property is being brought up to keep the basements out of as much as they can out of water and other concerns, but mostly to match the grades for the infiltration systems for stormwater and for septic. Now, we did review sort of the basics of the septic design just to make sure that they complied with required setbacks and things like that, knowing that none of the requirements of Title V are waivable. We didn't do a complete review because all that documentation wasn't provided, but the systems seem appropriately sized. They're going to have to demonstrate separation from groundwater and the other stuff you mentioned, but that's for your process rather than this one.
And about when do you expect we'll have the plans from you?
Just for clarity, Kay, I work for the town, not for the applicant. So I don't know if that question was directed here.
Well,
Yeah,
it's-
Kay, I was just gonna bring up the plans that we showed a couple hearings ago, just so you understand. And not the whole lot isn't shown, but just since you've taken the time to come here, I just want to show you that what I was trying to say is that the lots are going to be, brought up to street level. So this is the one that we saw that's going to have the septic system off to the right. So you've essentially seen the front. This is the house next to it that the two septic systems are gonna share. So the house that you haven't seen, as you can see, there's no mounding or anything like that.
Right.
Because again, the lots are 2 or 3 feet below. They kind of all go from the street. They kind of go like that right now.
Yes, this lot was a more gradual sloping of the grade.
Yeah, and then this is this last one is lot 45. And so this one has a retaining wall over here for the house, but the septic system that's over here isn't gonna be coming up at all.
The retaining walls at the front of the house were just to minimize the siding and steps. I'm sorry, the exposed like foundation and steps up into the house.
Yeah.
Well,
So as far as when would we come to see you? We first need to finish our process here with the Zoning Board of Appeals. They would need to close the hearing. They would need to vote on the project. And then there would be an appeal period that would need to go. Certainly, if they vote in favor, one of the conditions is that we are going to need to meet Title V. So I suspect again that we would most likely want to go into the Conservation Commission before we come into the Board of Health for Title V. I think that's farther down the road and closer to when they might be pulling a building permit. So I don't imagine it's going to happen anytime soon. Certainly, I would encourage my client, if they haven't already done so, to speak with, the Board of Health agent to make sure that everyone is comfortable where things are located. I don't know if that may have already happened. I do know that there was a fair amount of testing that has already been done on the sites.
No, the only testing that's been done is the perk testing, depot testing, and that was done in, I think, October of 2022, but no one has spoken with our agents since that time.
Okay.
And another concern, I assume that you're aware that this is a Zone 2 and that therefore a nitrogen sensitive area according to the DEP, and there are restrictions on bedroom numbers unless an innovative alternative system is installed. Are you aware of that?
Again, I'm at a loss because my engineer cannot be on here for another 20 minutes or so. I believe that issue was examined, but I will check in and get back to you on that. I'm quite sure that we were aware that it was in a zone 2. I remember that coming up on the original site walk during the mass housing process.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the renderings showing the appearance of the septic?
Yeah, I have a comment for Kay. This is Mike Donovan. One of the issues that was brought up about the septic system was the deep hole and perk tests were done in 2022 during a period of severe drought. We have asked, I asked the client to redo the deep hole and perk tests during a period of wetness, unusual, record wetness. And they've refused to do it. My fear is that the septic systems are going to be ill-designed to function correctly once you get back to a situation of normalcy and precipitation. So what you need to consider and kind of put it into your to-do is to figure out whether or not they have to do those deep hole and perk tests again to make sure that the septic systems are adequately above the water level, the groundwater level.
Well,
Mike, hold on, okay, Mike, that's an issue that Sean has addressed. Sean, do you want to comment on that? You need to unmute.
Sorry, to Mike's point, Mike, when we determine what's called estimated seasonal high groundwater, it's done by soil staining, which is sort of not dependent on the current water level. It's done by the historic staining done by the sort of recurring water levels. So it's not so critical that it gets done at any particular time of the year.
So Sean, do you know to what extent that is an issue that the Board of Health independently reviews? Is that part of their Title V review?
It is. So as part of their application for a septic system approval or a construction permit, they have to provide the testing results from their deep holes and make sure it complies with the requirements of Title V. And there are very explicit requirements under Title V for how many they need to have, how much separation they need from groundwater, and to Kay's point, also how they need to address the nitrogen loading criteria under Title V as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the issue of the waivers that have been requested. Lynn, how do you want to address those? I would note for everyone who's tuned in that you did submit a revised list earlier today that adds one requested waiver having to do with test pits. You want to go through these and explain what each one is, or how do you want to proceed?
I think I'm gonna have, if Jonathan is ready, I know that we have some notes from Daniel. Jonathan, do you want to run through them? Or do you
Sure,
want
I'm
me
happy to. I don't think much has changed from when we ran through them at the last hearing, and Dan did provide detail on why we were seeking the various waivers at that time. But I'm happy to do it again now, with the caveat that if there are any specific technical questions, we'll have to wait for him to hop on in hopefully 20 minutes or so. So with respect to the zoning waivers, pretty much all of them relate to the fact that
Can you make
we
that
have
larger,
you
Jonathan?
want me to make that bigger? Hang on one sec. Let's see what I can do here.
Great,
Wait, overdid it.
thank you.
How's that?
That's good.
Great, good.
great. So many of the waivers, the perfect square frontage, and many of the setbacks relate to the fact that we have two septic systems located on lot 2. And so the lot 1A has the required frontage. On Claybrook, it can't maintain the perfect square because the lot 2 septic system takes up some of that space. So if you were to look at it, it would look like a perfectly compliant lot. It's only because of the fact that the septic system for 1A is on lot 2 that those waivers are requested. And that applies to the frontage, the perfect square, and the a couple of the side setback requirements as well, and lot width. So with respect to the site access requirement, which is 185-19A3, accessing lot 1A off of its frontage is possible, but it would be less environmentally desirable because we would be putting a driveway in through the floodplain and requiring additional disturbance there. And so that's why we're asking for that waiver. So those are the zoning waivers. And then the side setback is between 1A and 2. That's why we need a waiver there. Those are both our lots. We're obviously not objecting to it. And it just improves the siting of the houses on those lots. So I can move on to the wetland protection bylaw and regulations, but I'll pause to see if anyone has questions on those.
Why don't you go ahead and finish going through them, and then we'll see if
Okay. So with respect to the wetlands protection bylaw, there's a prohibition on removing more than 50% of tree cover within any 100-foot section of the buffer zone. Minimum structure setback to a wetland of 70 feet and a limitation on disturbance to the wetland of 50 feet. Those requirements simply cannot be satisfied. And so we are asking for waivers from those requirements. And, based upon the result of the peer review, we think that the requested waiver is warranted. With respect to the Board of Health regulations, the Title V regulations, we did add, as you noted, Alan, one waiver request, which is the requirement to conduct additional test pits. We think that the test pits conducted in compliance with Title V are sufficient. And you just heard from your peer reviewer with respect to the fact that those test pits relied on modeling as opposed to the actual amount of water in the ground at that time. With respect to the requirement that septic fields be 100 feet setback from wetlands, again, it's just not possible to meet that requirement. Similarly, we cannot cite the septic system in compliance with the requirement that it not be within 3 feet of the surface of the ground, high groundwater, that is. Given the other constraints with respect to citing the houses and their systems. And again, we will have to comply with Title V. And then with respect to the requirement that the systems be sized for garbage grinders, we are not going to install garbage grinders in the units. We will include provisions, we'd happily accept a condition that requires a deed restriction prohibiting them. And therefore we're asking for a waiver from that requirement as well, because that would also prohibit or prevent development of the project. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, going back, these zoning waivers are basically minimal and sort of, amongst the lots that we're working with. With regard to the wetland protection bylaws, we have, as demonstrated by Tetra Tech, complied with the state's stormwater management principles. And with regard to the septic system, we are going to be complying or planning to comply with the state's Title V regulations. So that is why we're, there's specifics as to why we're asking for the waivers, but some of these are procedural that come out of the process of 40B.
And I'll just repeat one thing I said at the last hearing session, which is that I have never been involved in a 40B with a waiver, requested waiver list that is anywhere remotely as short as this one, or where particularly where the zoning waivers are as modest as what's being requested here.
So Lynn, just so that it's clear for everybody, you'll still have to comply with the state standards for Title V and wetland protection. What you're seeking here is not to have to comply with the stricter standards that are set under Dover's own bylaws.
Correct.
And that's, as I understand it, that's what the law requires, is that the applicant comply with the state requirements, but that it's not required to comply with stricter requirements set under a town's own bylaws.
Correct.
Sean, you want to say something?
Yeah, just a point of clarification as it relates to the 4 test holes. So Title V requires 4 test holes, 2 in each of the systems, the reserve area and the primary. But Title V also has an allowance that you can site the reserve area within the space between trenches of the primary, in which case you only need 2 test pits. So, the requirements of the Dover bylaw and the requirements of Title V are very similar, except in this one situation where the primary and the reserve septic systems are sort of co-located. To do 2 additional test pits in that same area is pretty much, it's actually counterproductive because it could smear soils and things like that. So they recognize that if you have the system in a single location, both the primary and the reserve, you only need 2 test holes.
Okay, thank you. Kate Peterson, you want to say something?
I just want to clarify that your setback from the wetlands will be in compliance with Title V and therefore 50 feet. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand what you said.
I'm asking whether well, I'm looking at my own sheet here with the requested waivers. The waiver is sought to allow the septic fields to be located within 100 feet of wetlands for all lots, and specifically that means no closer than 50 feet, which is
yes, they will be no closer than 50 feet setback from the septic. So we did look at what was required for where we put the buildings, what was required where we put septic systems, and what's required as to where we put the wells.
Okay, does anyone else have questions about these waiver requests? I see Laverne has something. Yes, go ahead, Laverne.
Well, I just have a question about garbage grinders. Even though you're not putting them in, what's to keep the person like 12 years after they move in from putting in a garbage grinder? I don't think it's something that needs a plumber, well, you get a plumber, but I don't think you need a permit to do that. So, you know, there's no way to really monitor that, I would think.
Well, I guess I would say a couple of things. Number one, there will be a binding deed restriction running in favor of the town. We've agreed to that as a condition. There will also, I presume, be a condition in the comprehensive permit. Both of those will be enforceable. And I would assume that if I'm going to buy a house and I'm told that my septic system cannot support a garbage grinder, I'm not going to want to risk the expense of you know, the repair bill
So who's
by
gonna,
putting a garbage grinder.
who's gonna tell them they can't have a garbage grinder? It's like the real
It's
estate
going
agent
to be
won't-
in their deed. That's what a deed restriction is.
And do
And
people
they
actually
will be informed.
do they read the deeds? I don't know.
You,
I've seen a
I
lot
mean,
of
you're,
things.
you're kind of going down a path. Everybody
You know,
that
I mean,
has a
I've been here
septic
50
system
years.
knows that they should not be using a disposal. And the developers are not going to be putting a disposal in. It'll be in the purchase and sale agreement. It will be in the comprehensive
thinking of the
permit.
future. I'm thinking of the future, you know. We've
That
given.
is up, that honestly, that is up to the Board of Health to enforce. That is not you know, the enforcement issue. All we can say is that it is the
Not
intent
allowed.
of the developer to not use garbage disposals. We have no problem with that being a condition of the permit. We have no problem with that being in a deed restriction. We can't look at the future. You don't look at the future at other single family homes in the community, do you?
I do, yes, absolutely. I also have a question about the two septic systems on one lot. So if that system fails, needs to be cleaned out, do they share that expense? Do they?
I misspoke. What I meant was that the septic system for lot 2
Yeah,
is actually technically on lot 2, but because of that, lot 2 sticks into lot 1A and creates the problem with the lot width and perfect square requirements. So
I'm gonna bring up the plan, just so that it's very clear, because it seems like we have you know, new people that are on this evening. Basically, the lot layout is each lot has its own septic system. So 2A is this, and it includes their septic system that they will be responsible for.
okay,
The reason this doesn't look like a square is because it's not a square. It is over here. Lot 1 has its septic system here. So each individual lot will be conveyed separately, and they will be responsible for their own individual septic system. The only thing is that lot 2A will have a right to pass over the front of lot 1A to get to their septic system. Most likely they will not be doing any passing here. Most likely they will be accessing any maintenance needed right from Trout Brook Road, but we can't separate off the lot. This is really just a legality to connect it to this property.
Lynn, I think this is confusing the way this is being discussed. Let me tell you how I understand it, and you tell me if I've got it right or not. So we currently have lots 1 and 2 that are standard looking lots. What you're going to do is redraw the lot lines
Correct.
so that for lot 2, and because of that, you're going to have lot 1A and lot 2A, which are different lots from the way they're currently configured as lots 1 and 2. So lot 2A is going to be given a strip across the front of lot 1
Correct.
and a bigger chunk on the far side of lot 1. It sort of looks like the state of Oklahoma, this piece. So that piece is going to be transferred from, I don't know what the right terminology is, but transferred from lot 1 to lot 2, so that lot 2 has this kind of weird shape, and takes a chunk out of lot 1 to become lot 1A and lot 2A. So the septic for lot 2 will be on the new lot 2A, within the boundaries of the new lot 2A. But it's going to be sitting right next to the septic leaching field for the new lot 1A. Is that right?
It's correct. It's not right next to. There is enough separation. So I just want to be clear about that. But
But
yes,
they're abutting each other.
there will be two septic fields close to each other, but each will serve a different lot.
And also because of that, to put a driveway in for the new lot 1A, it has to cross that piece of the new lot 2A that passes in front of lot 1A.
Right. And that's the reason for one of the waivers. Exactly. Because we don't want to be coming in over here. Or
Are there going
over
to be
here.
weight limits on that driveway based on the fact that it's going to run over top of the septic system?
There are septic systems located under driveways everywhere. So it's not going to be any different than anyone else has.
So no weight limit, or are you suggesting there is a weight limit?
I am not aware of a weight limit for somebody's driveway that has septic piping going underneath it. I just want to see if Dan has come on at this point. Oh, it looks like Dan's coming in. Phew. Hey, Dan.
Yes.
Welcome. So
Thank you.
somebody asked a question as to, is there any concern about somebody driving over a driveway that has septic pipes going underneath it
No.
with
Schedule-
regard to weight?
Septic pipes will all be Schedule 40 PVC. They're suitable for under driveways.
Great. The other thing, and thank you for coming. This is Dan American with Legacy Engineering, who was double booked tonight. So we're really happy to have him here. There was a question raised by Kay from the Board of Health with regard to the fact that some of the property is partially located in Zone 2.
Yes.
And whether or not we had examined how that impacted our bedroom count.
Yes, we have. So Title V stipulates that when you're in a nitrogen sensitive area like a Zone 2, you can have 1 bedroom for every 10,000 square feet of lot area. All of the proposed septic system designs are designs for 4 bedrooms, and each of the lots have at least 40,000 square feet of land area, so it complies with Title V. And not all of the septic systems are in a Zone 2. Actually, the ones for lots 1 and 2 are outside of the Zone 2, so that wouldn't apply to them. But nonetheless, the lots meet the requirement.
Okay, any, Laverne?
It says a waiver is sought from requiring tree locations to be shown on the plans. Oh, that's not what I mean. A waiver is sought to allow greater than 50% tree cover removal within the buffer zone. How much greater than 50% are we talking?
It's hard to answer. So the Conservation Commission has this very kind of elaborate regulation that requires you to look at the buffer zone in 100-foot long chunks and to count trees, and it limits you to the removal of not more than 50% of the total basal area of the trees. So you have to field locate all the trees and calculate the basal area of every tree, and then it's an elaborate thing. So in some portions of the site, we're not disturbing the buffer zone, but in other areas we are disturbing more than 50%. I couldn't put a number to it right now.
And I do want to remind everybody that in one of the prior meetings, we have agreed to a condition that would have us flag either what trees are remaining or which trees are being removed. I can't remember which one, but those will be documented prior to construction.
I was under the impression that some of these lots were just going to be clear cut, so I'm not correct about that.
None of the lots will be clear cut. There will be developed areas where trees will be cut down, but the lots will certainly not be clear cut.
Thank you.
I believe at the last meeting, we had gone through we had submitted plans that had this red line on them, Laverne, that had the area of work that showed what parts of the lots were going to be disturbed. I don't know, Dan, if you want me to bring that up again, if we want to go through it again.
It's up to the board.
I don't have to see that again. I was just curious if this is going to be clear cut or leave a buffer zone around the edge
Well,
someplace.
there's definitely buffers around the proposed developed areas. And we talked about, at the last meeting, we talked about in 2 specific locations on 2 of the lots, a condition where we would provide additional plantings, because in all the other locations, we have a lot of wooded areas, whether they're in wetlands or not, that surround the development pad that are not going to be disturbed.
Yeah, and that was the 2 lots was lot 4, which is at the corner of Trout Brook and Chickering, and the other is lot 45, which is on Edgewater. We had talked about adding additional buffer to those.
Lynn, one thing that I don't think, one issue that was raised by one of the residents had to do with the fact that Claybrook Road is designated as a scenic road. And under the scenic road bylaw, it prohibits removal of trees within the right of way. As I understand the proposal, you're not going to be doing anything to any trees within the Claybrook Road right of way, which would affect lot 1.
That's correct.
Is that your understanding?
That's correct. No trees will be removed within the right of way along Claybrook.
Okay. Anyone else have questions about the waiver requests?
Yeah, just going back to the septic system going under the driveway. If the board remembers, Red Robin Pastures, 90% of the septic system was covered by the parking lot. So that was a very large septic system, so not a problem.
This is literally somebody has a strip of land going over the driveway, and it's a strip of land that is just connecting the 2 parcels. It's not what the way that the system itself is going to be serviced. Sorry, been a long day.
Well, I don't think the question's unreasonable, but it sounds from what Dan's saying like there's no real issue of a FedEx truck or something like that causing damage to the septic pipes by pulling in the driveway. Is that right, Dan?
That's correct.
Okay. Anybody have comments at this point? Nina?
Sorry, just a quick question about the septic issue and the lot layouts as well. Lynn, I think you might have misspoken and had it backwards, so I just want to make sure it's clear for the board. And I apologize, I'm town council for you. You had mentioned that the lot 2 would have an easement over lot 1. I think you mean lot 1 would have an easement over that strip of lot 2A.
That's correct.
And I would just want to make sure that that is memorialized as a condition, that certainly the folks in lot 1A are going to need very clear access rights over that strip.
Yeah, I apologize for that. We have no issue with there being a requirement for an easement between lot 1A and lot 2A relative to the strip of land.
And we would be presenting that plan that creates those lot lines to the zoning board. Traditionally, it's submitted to the planning board, but in the case of a comprehensive permit, even an A&R plan would be submitted to the zoning board. So when we get to the point of preparing that lot division plan, it will show the easements on it, and it will be shown to the zoning board.
When does that happen, and this, at what stage of the process would that happen, Dan?
It would happen prior to the issuance of a building permit. So that's probably an appropriate condition to include that the applicant prepare and submit. It's called an approval not required, an A&R lot division plan to create lot 1A and lot 2A with the pertinent easements prior to issuance of a building permit.
Okay. John?
Yeah, and just at our request, they noted those easements on the comprehensive permit plans as they're going to need both an access and utility easements because lot 1A's utility services cross that same sliver as well. But they're called out on the plans that you guys are reviewing right now.
Okay. Lynn, what are you showing us?
That's the easement area shaded in kind of yellow at the top. It's hard to see on this, but it's that strip across.
Yeah, it is hard to see. Can you kind of highlight to the pointer where you're talking about?
Lynn had, I think Lynn is sharing this. I'm not sharing it. Lynn, you're muted. It's that hatched area there.
Okay, so it runs from the lot 1A leaching field across the front of the house on lot 1A.
Correct.
Okay. I see it does say access and utility easement.
Sorry, I couldn't get back to the unmute with the plan and have it shared at the same time. Yeah, I was just trying to show you that what Sean said is that we have been, kind of outlining, where that's going to be. And I believe the lots, I don't think we need a separate lotting plan. And I just want to ask Jonathan, I think the plans that we've submitted are the actual lot line plans that you're going to be approving today. I think that a condition of the permit is that we need to come in with an easement agreement that has a easement plan attached to it. That's what we would want a condition for.
Well, I think we would probably need to, I don't think that the current plans have the, reference to section 81P and the signature lines for the board to endorse it as approval not required. So we probably would need at some point to submit that plan, but that's pro forma.
And we can also submit the language at that same time. It'll either be a grant or a reservation of easement rights. So we could submit that to the board to review later.
Okay. Okay, any other comments on the waiver requests? Okay, one issue we need to talk about, not substantive, but important to our peer review consultants. The escrow funds are running a little low, down to less than $1,000. I'm pretty sure we're going to need to have a little more funds available to cover the final invoices from our two peer review consultants. Lynn, I think from what I understand, we got a little less than $1,000 there. What I'd like to do is get another 3,000. Obviously, any balance that remains gets refunded. Do you have any problem with that?
My recommendation would be.
I kind of do. Wait a minute, Jonathan. So, as far as I know, there's no other work needed by Cliff at this point. I don't think he's at this meeting, right? So I think he sent his final bill at this point. And Sean is here, and I guess I'm, again, and I guess my question to you is twofold. If we're done, with the peer review consultants now, I think the fact that we've got 995 in there seems to be enough to cover, today's meeting. If it is your intention that the peer reviewers be involved with reviewing a decision, then that would totally make sense to me that you would need more funds. So I'm just trying to find out what the intention is before I commit to a number for the client, if you don't mind.
Then I don't expect any, I don't know whether there'll be anything further from Cliff. If there is, I expect it would be minimal. But the last invoice from Sean Reardon's firm, Tetra Tech, was a little while ago. I know he has put in time already that he has not billed for yet. And we obviously have some additional time from his being with us tonight. And I don't know, but there may be some additional input we need from them as we deliberate. So that's the reason why I think 3,000 is appropriate.
So Alan, what I would say is it's not uncommon, and I think it would be reasonable for a condition of approval to be that the applicant within 30 days of receipt of any final bills provide payment for those outstanding peer review fees as of the date of the decision. And if there are any post-approval peer review activities required, then that would also be a reasonable requirement or condition of approval.
Jonathan, I apologize. We've both been straight out. It does look like the last invoice from Tetra Tech is 126. And I'm trying to remember. I feel like we did have a meeting at the beginning of the month. I just want to see when the last peer review letter came out. I don't want to be unreasonable about this. Because I feel like that there was work done.
I can assure you, John, that Sean has done additional work since his last invoice, and
that's what I'm looking at. So, Jonathan, I do think that, I think it's reasonable to not ask Sean, to wait.
No, I'm saying that we'll pay them within 30 days of getting those bills. I'm just saying that what I don't think is reasonable would be a requirement that because we can't do it in this moment, we're asking for the hearing to be closed tonight. And I think that it's reasonable for us to.
I think that there's confusion here. We are asking for the hearing to be closed tonight. But they are asking us to put more money into the peer review fund tonight for them to vote to ask us to put more money into the peer review fund tonight, so that when Sean sends his bill in, it can get paid.
This will not delay the closing of the hearing if we do that tonight. But you may recall we've discussed this before and what the town's bylaws require. And the town does have the right to request what I'm suggesting. And that is something that the applicant has an obligation to comply with.
And I'm not saying anything to the contrary, Alan. I'm just saying that we will pay it, of course. I'm just asking that, as previously happened, the board's processing of this application is not held up while it waits for that payment to be made that we're just being asked for now.
No,
Sean, your last peer review was January 18th, and your last bill was January 26th. Did it include?
Just a minute, Len.
Include your peer review?
Just a minute, Len. Jonathan, this will not hold up our process. And I don't understand why we're spending so much time discussing this. The amount is not unreasonable. The process works the way it's defined in the bylaw. And there's absolutely no reason I can see why we need to discuss this any further. And I don't think it's appropriate to interrogate Sean about
I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand where I'm going back and looking at history because I want to be able to put the right amount of money in now, or an estimate of what the right amount of money is to take care of it. And all I want to hear from Sean is that his last letter, which I know was very time consuming, was dated January 18th, and his last invoice from what you sent me today was dated January 26th. And I'm just trying to ask if all of that time, including that second letter on the peer review, was included.
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay. All right.
All I know is our total expended costs are going to be less than what we originally budgeted in our original proposal. So I don't know how the sort of the interim payments have happened, but we're still under what we projected as our original budget.
Oh, okay. We have no problem, Alan. I'm sorry. We have no problem. We'll drop off another check for 3,000, and then if there's anything left over once the hearing is closed later tonight, and within the next 30 days, there are no more invoices, we would ask for our money to be returned.
But we have an obligation to do that.
Right.
So before you send us a check, I first need to get the board to vote for
Okay.
this.
Yeah. Sorry.
So-
I'm sorry about that. Just kind of
Okay.
looking
Let's move-
in a looking glass here.
Let's move forward. I'll entertain a motion to request that the applicant deposit an additional $3,000 into the town's escrow account for peer review fees.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Okay, the motion passes. Okay, Lynn, are there any other issues at this point that you think we need to address before we close the hearing?
Not that I'm aware of. We appreciate the board's time.
Okay, what I want to do at this point is to give other town officials and members of the public a chance to make any comments or raise any questions that they have. Dennis Murphy?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name's Dennis Murphy. I'm an attorney for the abutters. I was last at this hearing a couple of months ago. And I want to raise three quick issues. One is some further thinking on the issue we discussed in November, which had to do with the scattered site nature and the HAC decision in the Farm Street Trust case. So this zoning board was a party to that case. In my view, it's binding on the board. The case actually said on page 3 that whether or not you approve a scattered site is a programmatic policy decision to be addressed in the first instance by the local board. The board could have chosen as a matter of policy to permit this sort of scattered site housing. So in my view, you have the legal right to consider this, but based on the precedent in the Farm Street Trust case, you also have the right to say that it's not eligible for a 40B. So if the applicant, through the course of this public hearing, has persuaded you that this proposal is in the best interest of the town of Dover, I think that you probably have the legal authority. Don't take Nina's word for it. She knows more of this than I do. The legal authority to do it under that case. Nevertheless, I can tell you, after doing 40Bs for 25 years, I am aware of no other instance where there is a scattered site 40B even proposed since the last one in Dover in 2000. And the problem I have with it in concept is there's no limiting principle. There's no rule or law that says that the scattered sites can only be a block or a mile or in the same neighborhood. Theoretically, they could be in different towns. You'd have to get separate comprehensive permits from each town, but you could have one on the Vineyard, one in Amesbury, one out in Adams, and another who knows where. The second point I wanted to make, when you were asked to waive a number of bylaws that belong to your fellow land use boards, I'd suggest that the board ought to be really cautious about that. Don't handcuff the Concom or the Board of Health. They have their remit, they have their mandate under their operational laws, and you're being asked to act on their behalf and waive bylaws that they haven't even had a chance to fully review this. So I would not suggest whatever waivers you're inclined to grant under zoning. You're the zoning board and you have that authority, but waivers of wetlands and Board of Health, leave that to those boards. The issue came up today about scenic roads. That is a state law. Trees within the curtilage of a scenic road are called public shade trees. This board doesn't have the authority to waive that, even if you wanted to. My final point, I sat on my own zoning board for many years in the seats that you now have. If you vote your conscience, you can't be wrong. I know there's been a lot that's happened at this hearing to suggest what might happen next. I suggest that when you decide what to do, what's best for the town of Dover, you not consider about what the applicant might do in the event they want to challenge the law of the Farm Street Trust case. Vote your conscience and you can't be wrong. Thank you very much.
So Dennis, let me just say a couple things. Thanks for your comments. On the scattered site issue and the prior case, I'm going to want to take another look at that once we close the hearing to do a careful analysis of what the case says and how it relates to any changes in the state regulations. Second thing on the waivers, the way the 40B process works, it's this board, even though in other projects that are not 40B, other boards would be dealing with a lot of these issues. The waivers have to be decided by this board. What we don't decide and leave to the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission are compliance with state law standards. But to the extent that there are any local bylaws or regulations that are more strict than state standards, it's this board that has to deal with the waivers. So it's not up to us to pass that off to these other boards. We have to deal with it. Scenic roads, obviously, we've discussed that. So, and they say they're not going to do anything that's within the limits of the Scenic Road Act and bylaws. So that appears not to be an issue. Thank you for your comments.
Could I respond? Just one quick response.
Sure.
The argument was made that you're not the right body to decide this scattered site issue, that's already been incorporated in the project eligibility approval. Nothing in the PE letter actually reflects that. And one of my clients did a public records request that makes very clear that Mass Housing was not even aware of the Farm Street Trust case until 5 months after it issued, 5.5 months after it issued the PE letter. The suggestion that your building inspector, who did raise the issue very early on, that somehow that was fully vetted and incorporated into the project eligibility, I think is really not accurate based on the email exchanges that happened. I think my understanding is the town didn't have a planner at the time, and so missed the opportunity to provide a whole set of public comments. And, frankly, the issue was missed, and it didn't come to light until after the application was before the board at this hearing. And so that's unfortunate, but I think that it squarely is within this board's prerogative to look at the decision and figure out how this application fits within its parameters.
Understood,
Mr. Chairman, can I address the email issue since it concerns me?
Just a moment, Lynn.
Thank
The
you.
one thing I wanted to say, Dennis, was your comment, your final comment about following our conscience, and we can't go wrong. This is not a question of conscience. We're not dealing with civil rights, civil liberties, that sort of thing. We're dealing with legal standards that are set under Chapter 40B. So we really have to follow the law, and we will do our best to do that. Lynn, what would you like to say?
Attorney Murphy, it's possible that you didn't look at the information that was sent. Your public records request to Mass Housing went to the wrong people. Kat Miller wasn't even at Mass Housing when I started this process. My emails went to Jessica Malcolm and Mike Busby, and they were very, very clear that this was a scattered site project that we had not worked on before. And there's an email in that file that says, we agree it's okay for you to do a scattered site project. So I'm very troubled and saddened that you didn't get the information that you were looking for, but it 100% is out there.
That information should be posted on the town's webpage for this proposal, Dennis. So you're welcome to take a look at that. I see a hand raised by Mr. Hoffman. Go ahead, Peter.
Hi. Thanks for hearing me again. I'm disappointed to hear that same argument from Lynn Sweet again. She mischaracterizes what the FOIA request was. We talked about this last time. I sent a request to Mass Housing and asked for any correspondence between the developer and any of his agents with Mass Housing. Okay? So what you keep arguing in this board is that they did not comply with the FOIA requirements. And, you know, that is a stretch, I believe. I think they would probably disagree with you on that. And to try and argue that over and over again, despite my clear indication that that was not the case, is really disingenuous.
Well,
And
Peter, I appreciate your comments. The record is what it is. We have the submissions from your FOIA request. We have the submissions from the applicant in response to that. We'll take a look at those again. That's another thing I want to review before we make any decision.
okay. Yeah, so that's
look
great.
at that record and see what it says and what it indicates as to what Mass Housing was aware of and what it wasn't. Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, so you'll notice that the last correspondence was Lynn emailing the case over to Mass Housing, and then it went silent. But also, so I just had some comments that I wanted to first wish everybody happy Valentine's Day. And wanted to thank the board and the chair, Alan Fryer, for holding a thoughtful, fair, and efficient hearing. Thank you for your patience. We didn't ask for this application, and we're doing our best to get our rights heard and our arguments heard in a process we have no control over. I have no control over what the Mass Housing provided to me or when. I mean, I had control over when I submitted it and the very broad request I made, but I wasn't sitting on the document and waiting until 3 days before the hearing and submitting it at that point. So, and I realize I created a lot of extra work for you guys, making our arguments on behalf of myself and my neighbors, and I do appreciate it. And I've been doing my best to try and be fair and complete here while meeting the requirements of the board. In the spirit of recognizing your selfless service on behalf of the Dover residents, I do want to keep my comments short. I'm not going to rehash all the arguments why this doesn't make any sense from the policy perspective, from anybody's perspective. We've made all those arguments, and I hope that you've reviewed them and they're in the record. Instead, I just want to urge the board to stand up to the bullying and threats from the developers' agents. Do not roll over for Attorney Silverstein or Mass Housing. We have zero indication that Mass Housing thinks. We have zero indication of what Mass Housing thinks about the Farm Street Trust case and its application here. As Attorney Murphy mentioned, he said that as well. It clearly was not discussed. To then ignore what the Dover Zoning Board of Appeals did 20 years ago doesn't make any sense to me. And the threat of what mass housing may do later or whatever, I don't really think that's appropriate to consider. Actually, the only people who have the answer to that question ultimately of whether that applies would be the courts and the judge. And that's the way the system is designed. Similarly, pay attention to the language here. They are requesting waivers. They are requesting them. Why are we calling it a request if it's just a slam dunk procedural, it's a requirement? It's not a requirement, it's a request. And in fact, in the very beginning of this process, I sent a memo explaining how the board has the right to reject waivers, and there's case law on this. You wouldn't be the first ones to have done it. And I urge you to stand up for the town of Dover and its residents when a case such as this, it just makes no sense. The law envisions a process by which towns can reject applications, and this is exactly the kind of application that deserves to be rejected. 37 abutters for one house. Attorney Silverstein likes to say how, oh, I've never had a case with this few waivers, these few waivers. Well, how many cases has he had where there's one affordable house? Why don't we ask him that? And
so John, Peter, let me just say, this is, I think we don't want to be doing closing argument type statements here. I think we understand your position. If there's any factual issue that you have a question about still, or any specific legal standard you think we're not aware of, please let us know. Otherwise, I would like to move on. I do want to say that we've had a lot of input from residents and citizens, and we appreciate that. Don't apologize for your submissions making the process longer or anything like that, because it's part of our job to accept your input and evaluate it and process it and respond accordingly. So we do appreciate all of that, and we're happy. We're here doing our jobs, happy to do it as on behalf of the town, and we'll evaluate the legal standards that apply, on the waivers, even though they're called requests. Legally, we have an obligation to allow them unless there is a legitimate legal basis for not doing so. We're aware of all that, and we will do the best we can in making a decision. But at this point, I just want to find out if there's any more informational issues that anyone has questions about or would like us to address. Peter, one more chance. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. And I was done with my comments, but you asked about any sort of legal arguments, additional ones. I mean, just that town needs is one of the legal bases for denying requests. And that's what the case law, I read the case law when this case first started, and I urge you to read my memo that I submitted at that point. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We'll look at your memo and all the other input we've gotten and evaluate it before we make any decision.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. Tracy Mannion, I see you have a hand up.
Yes, thank you, Ellen. Thanks everybody for being here, and happy Valentine's Day. Just to, humanize this, my house is the one beside lots 1 and 2, 1A, 2A. There's a lot of water in between those lots and my driveway and my electrical meter, which does cause me a lot of concern. And I know there's new people on this call, so I just wanted to mention that I am concerned about the water runoff from the backfill. I won't be backfilling any of my wetlands or anywhere near these wetlands, so I'm still very concerned about the water runoff coming over beside my driveway and electrical system. And having been in this neighborhood my whole life, I know how wet these lots are, and there's still a lot of concern there. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, you want to say something?
I just wanted to address some of the comments that have come in about the waiver list. And and I just kind of don't want it to get lost along the way. And is that, there is an issue with these lots will not be able to be developed without the waivers that we're asking for. It would make the project uneconomic. And that is, the standard that we have to deal with when we're dealing with a 40B. And I don't think we mentioned that when we were going through the waiver list. And again, I know that this is new to some people. And I do want to reiterate one more time, again, for people that are new, that this project was peer reviewed by both Cliff Bomer, an architect, who said essentially that these are just, single family homes. They look great, be careful about what you do around the neighbors. And I think that, the suggestions that have been made on buffering are really important. And again, all of it has been peer reviewed for what is in Tetra Tech's, wheelhouse. And again, they came back with a letter last time saying that all of the concerns had been satisfied and that there is more, should this project move forward, there are more processes that the developer has to go through with regard to the Board of Health and with regard to the Conservation Commission. But we are also very appreciative of everyone's time.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Anyone else? Last chance.
Alan, I would just want to jump in and advise the board that if they have any factual questions, they should ask them now before the hearing closes. This is your last opportunity to take in factual information.
Yeah. Board members, any other questions? Not hearing any. Okay. Then what I would do is entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. So let me just say, in terms of describing the process and the next steps for those who haven't been through this before. The basic concept here is that with the exception of the Concom dealing with compliance with the State Wetland Protection Act and the Board of Health ensuring compliance with State Title V standards, this board, the Board of Appeals, is the one board that the applicant has to deal with in terms of getting permission to go forward. And as I mentioned before, to the extent that local standards are more strict than state standards, the applicant is entitled to waivers from those standards as long as they continue to comply with the state standards, unless there's some compelling reason based on local needs not to grant those waivers. Very limited authority for the Board of Appeals to deny the requests for waivers from the local rules and bylaws. So at this point, what happens is the board will have to make a decision. We have three choices here. One is to either deny the application outright. Second option is to approve it as submitted. The third is to approve it with any conditions that we deem appropriate within the scope of what we're permitted to request. We're allowed to attach reasonable conditions as long as they're consistent with local needs. For example, the applicant has indicated they're receptive to a condition that would deal with suitable landscaping around the septic systems. What we cannot do is impose conditions that make the project uneconomic. So we'll have to make a decision. We have 40 days from now, with the close of the hearing, to issue our decision. Once the decision issues, there's a 20-day appeal period. And if the application is denied or if it is granted with conditions that the applicant deems unacceptable, they can appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee within that 20-day appeal period. If any residents or butters want to appeal any decision that we make, they can appeal to either the housing court or the land court by filing a lawsuit. Now that the hearing is closed, there will be no further input from either the applicant or the public or other town officials. We will deliberate. We will discuss potential conditions to impose if the application is going to be granted. We will review the requests for waivers. Then we'll take a vote, and once we take a vote, we'll issue our decision. We'll see what the other board members want to do. My thought is not to try to make a decision tonight, because I would like to review again that decision from 20 or so years ago on scattered sites, to review the FOIA requests for the mass housing materials, and other things as well, including the submissions from our peer review consultants. We have a meeting already scheduled for February 29th, and it seems to me it would be appropriate and suitable to discuss the application at that meeting, and hopefully make a decision that night. Other board members, what are your thoughts? If you have any.
I agree with that proposal.
Yeah, that gives us a little time to think.
Yeah, I do think it, this is important. It affects a lot of people, and I would like to have a chance to carefully review the materials that have been submitted. And, it's one thing to review them in the beginning or early in the process. It's another to look at them once we have all the input we're going to get, which we now have, all the commentary on it and so forth. So I can do a more informed analysis by reviewing it between now and our next meeting, and then we can see where we are. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, Alan. Very good.
Okay. So, so let's plan to continue. We have a meeting on the 29th at 7 o'clock via Zoom. We have that's an application from the town for the improvements to the Dedham Street and Willow Street to deal with Millnet Brook. We'll deal with that first, and then because that's a formal hearing that is scheduled to start at 7 o'clock. Once that ends, we will take this up and hopefully make a decision. Nina, do you have any other comments at this point on the process or anything I've said?
No, I have one persnickety legal comment, which is since you're remote, all of your votes should be taken by a roll call, including all the votes during the meeting.
Okay. I do want to say, Nina, you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, that there is I think it's state law that says that a board member can be eligible to vote only if they have missed no more than one meeting. And if they miss a meeting, they have to review a video or a transcript or something of that meeting. Does that change when we're doing everything by Zoom and you have the meeting's fully recorded so that you can watch the whole thing? Because I think Nancy has missed 2 of them.
No, as long as so who is voting on this? Do you have any alternates or anything voting, or it's just the board members?
Well, assuming everybody's here the next time, Laverne and Nadir and I are the full members, and we would be the ones to vote. But just in case one of us somehow doesn't make the next meeting and we're taking the vote, I just want to be clear on whether, if Nancy were to need to vote, whether she has any problems being authorized to vote.
Yeah, so the rule hasn't changed with respect to that. But if Nancy has missed 2 meetings, she can simply watch them on Zoom, and if needed to vote, she'll be fine.
Okay.
But so you're planning to have Laverne, Allen, and Nadir vote?
Right. We're the full members, and it's only as long as all full members are present, they're the ones whose votes count. What we
Yep.
normally do is we ask the associate members to also indicate how they would vote if they had authority to vote. But obviously, under those state standards, their votes don't officially count as long as all the full members are voting and present. Okay.
No problem with that.
Okay, so anything else we need to discuss before we adjourn? Hearing nothing?
Alan, this is
Yeah.
Caitlin Glass from Woodard and Curran. I think we were hoping to discuss the waiver of the application fee for um, the Dedham Street and Willow Street culvert.
Oh, at the beginning of our meeting tonight, we voted to waive that.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
I put that up first so I didn't forget it this time.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. That's good news.
I'm
I joined
sorry if
a few minutes late, so
sorry if you were sticking with us for a full hour and a half.
yeah.
I can hear that. But
That
yes,
okay. All
we're all
right.
set.
Well, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roll
Aye.
call.
Okay,
Roll
thank you,
call.
everyone.
Roll call. Nancy says aye.
Nadir
Thanks,
says
everybody.